Good morning, Wednesday, May 7th, 2025, here in House Transportation. We are going to do some work this morning on S-123, our miscellaneous motor laws related to motor vehicles. John Clifford has like to come in and speak with around the inspection portion and probably a little bit of reference to what we're going to hear about later on this morning from Representative Noyes related to inspections, and we spent some time on it. And it's been some more. So good morning and welcome. Please come on up to the chair and introduce yourself and a little bit about your background and let us know what you have to say about what's in the S-123.
Hi, I'm John Clifford. I am a Vermont native. I was born in St. Albans and went to grade school in Montpelier and high school in Brattleboro and college at UVM, so all in Vermont. In fact, I used to run the streets of Montpelier because with my brothers and our bikes in grade school and elementary school. It was used to be a toy store in the corner. We used to like the frequent. But anyway, my claim to fame primarily, other than the rest of my credentials, is I was a automotive professor at Vermont Technical College for a number of years. I taught a number of courses there. I was co-chair of the department. I have a bio that kind of goes over the rest of highlights of my credentials and career and so forth. I first became certified to work on cars and light trucks in the 1980s after my military service. And yes, there were carburetors and mechanical distributors back then. If you don't know what those are, you don't need to know. It was not really a conscious career choice for me, but I had a love of cars and I just started reading technical manuals and it grew from there. I presume in your deliberations, you've taken testimony from the VADA, Chamber of Commerce, repair facilities, DMV, natural resources, you name it. I don't know if you've heard from the technician side of things very often. I was a certified master ASE technician for 30 years, had the L1 advanced engine performance, just about all the certifications you could possibly get. I also was a licensed inspector for 20 plus years, and I don't know how many cars I inspected over the years, how many I failed, the problems that I saw on cars, the sad eyes on customers as they heard the repair bill. This is primarily why I'm here today. I do want to give you a note on ASE testing if you've not heard testimony on this before. It began in 72. I think I took my first test in early 80s. It is expensive. Conscientious technicians do it regularly. It can be pretty expensive if you take 2 or 3 tests every single year. There's a registration fee. There's a separate test fee. And in fact, being a technician can be pretty costly in terms of its hard work, ASE testing, a lot of professional tools and equipment to do the job, a lot of after-hours reading. I mean, if a person's being conscientious about, because not everything, a Class A technician at a dealership, which is what I was, for both Chrysler, Ford, GM. I also work for Hyundai and Subaru. A Class A technician is going to be expected to work on anything bumper to bumper that kind of rolls in the shop. I mean, so, my car makes a strange noise going over the bump in front of my driveway on Tuesday mornings at 7 o'clock. I don't know why that is. So on and so forth. So it can be pretty pressure oriented as well. In terms of being able to identify an issue that's repairable at a reasonable cost to the customer. At some point, if you're interested in the future, I'd be happy to come back and discuss my thoughts and concerns over the past 25 years, the state of technical education in Vermont and technician licensing, which there isn't any. I mean, we license haircutters, cemetery diggers, plumbers, electricians, but apparently, if you're working on $100,000 car with 30 computers on board and you do an electrical arc that ruins them all, that's not an issue. I also want to point out that
Yeah, that's a good one.
that smog states like Colorado and California, and actually I was a licensed emissions inspector in Colorado. That's where I went to technical college for automotive. Those smog states, obviously it's completely different out there. They have enhanced tailpipe testing. And I know that's maybe a dirty word for Vermont, but out there, they take their gas emissions pretty seriously. And tailpipe testing is a very strenuous IM 240 test that monitors and samples total exhaust pollutions over a period of 240 seconds in a variety of road driving conditions. And that's really sad when it comes out that a vehicle exceeded carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, oxides of nitrogen, whatever the case may be. And the customer is told there's no dollar limit for them to repair that engine to pass that test, whatever the case may be. And California has obviously always been on the leading edge of forced technology, making car manufacturers comply with their standards to control emissions. And along those same lines, obviously technicians that work in those states also have to be at the leading edge in terms of their knowledge and ability to diagnose those failures and so on. So discussing S123 and primarily my concern, section 43, I read over the rest of your changes in that bill and I've got nothing to say about them. I do have an opinion on the window tinting section of it, but like many in Vermont, I am pretty concerned about affordability. I live here, pay taxes here and so on. And for low and middle income Vermonters, my concern is the extreme expense, in my opinion, of periodic vehicle inspections and of course, purchase and use taxes for the individuals that have to pay that. If testimony that you received from the DMV saying that in 2024, 485,000 inspections and registrations, if we just use a standard fee of $100 for a VSI, that's $50 million, borne by taxpayers to just inspect our cars. I mean, not even to register. And that's a pretty high burden, I think, for the taxpayers of this state. And I'm going to go along here and discuss what I think they may be getting for that or not. My thoughts are really going to be on the mill light issue. Kind of zeroing in on that because, we could talk about rust on rotors or cracked brake hoses or tire wear concerns or uneven tire wear or suspension jouncing, bounce conditions or whatever the case may be. Headlight aiming, all part of the inspection criteria. But Vermont initiated an OBD2 check in July of '99. And actually, I was here working on cars when that was first enacted. And according to Vermont's OBD2 training that we received at that time, the purpose for the OBD2 check was really it's a poor man's way of trying to monitor and control for tailpipe emissions. I mean, it isn't the full tailpipe emissions, which I understand to enact that it would be a bear. I mean, you've got a lot of expensive equipment, you've got a dyno, you've got the training certified technicians, you've got to run cars through it on an annual basis, or maybe semi-annual, or maybe once every 2 years, 3 years, whatever the case may be. And it's gonna be, I imagine you get a lot of pushback from drivers in Vermont because
Representative White?
If I could just clarify, just make sure I'm following you. What does OBD stand for?
onboard diagnostics.
Okay.
Onboard diagnostics, second generation. This happens to be General Motors version of their factory manual, but I also have Ford, Chrysler, Hyundai.
And is that referring to the whole inspection process or specifically to emissions?
Well, it gets into a much lengthier discussion, but the onboard diagnostics second generation was enacted in 1996 on new model cars, and it was grandfathered in. And it set up a standard for all car manufacturers to meet. In other words, a diagnostic link connector had to be a standard 16 pin. It had to be located in a certain location under the wheel well, not the wheel well, under the driver's compartment. The alphanumeric 5-digit codes, diagnostic trouble codes had to be standardized, P codes, U codes,
So
C
that was
codes.
like across American manufacturers?
Yes,
To standardize?
yes,
Okay,
to
got it.
include imports,
Okay.
like
And then I have one
European.
other question, which you were talking about. There's no licensing for technicians in the state of Vermont.
Yeah.
So is that car technicians, car inspection technicians? No licensing of?
No. I mean, to be a licensed inspector, to work for the state to do the tests,
To do the inspections.
you have to be licensed.
You have to be a licensed.
Yeah, you gotta be 18 years old, you gotta work for a licensed emissions facility, you gotta pass a test. I can't remember.
But for general working on automobiles.
I mean, be someone off the street, go to the boss, hey, I do my thermostat in my backyard, can you hire me? Sure, you're hired.
Okay, all right, thank you.
There's no particular criteria.
Representative McCall?
So I know that plumbers and electricians, as you said, have to be recertified. Did you say that it's like the emissions or people who do our inspections yearly do not have to be recertified?
Your car inspections, I
Yes.
think it's a 5-year term on the
Okay.
license.
Okay, so they have to be recertified.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's just a renewal. It's like a license renewal at that point.
But not taking so many credits to show like you do
No.
for plumbing and.
No, unless it's changed in the last, I don't know, 20 years.
Okay,
When I had my license last, every 5 years, as long as you renewed it, you were good.
okay,
Unless you lost it, unless a DMV inspector came in and had an issue with one of your inspections and they suspended your license or something. But other than that,
all right, thank you.
okay. So OBD2, because I'm going to get to this in a minute. OBD2 is an engine management system. When you start up your laptop, hit the on button, the laptop goes through a boot up routine where it checks the screen, the numbers, whatever, the RAM and whatever memories and all that sort of thing, and then allows you to go to Windows. Our car does the same thing. When you put the ignition into the on position, a key on, engine off, it does a boot up routine. And that's where you see the check engine lights come on and the ABS light and the airbag light and the chassis lights and so on and so forth. And once a vehicle is started and running, the OBD2 through what they call a diagnostic executive, which is the engine management program, running every single second. It is running checks of sensors and circuits and doing performance and intrusive tests and so on and so forth. And what I'm going to actually get to here in a second is in order to take that mill light issue that's in the state inspection and follow through with that towards a repair, technicians need to understand what that is, how to deal with it, how to work with it, how to diagnose with it, and how to make repairs and repairs that are going to last. The vehicle's not going to come back to the same shop the next day or a week down the road with the same check engine light and the same issue, so on and so forth. Dry, mouth is dry. The other thing to remember is on newer cars, does anybody get any idea how many computers are on a newer car, like a 2024?
Well, you said 30, but I thought you were exaggerating.
Oh, that's a low number. 30 would be a low number.
So these are microchips. When you say
Well-
they're microchips that are like.
Yeah, it's a microchip. We'll just call them processors.
Yeah.
For whatever it's processing. Obviously, the largest computer in the car, the onboard computer, is the powertrain control module, which runs, thank you, which runs the engine and transmission typically. And it's like 180 pins and it's extremely fast. You know, like the computers that they're putting in electric cars run on terabytes per second. Made by NVIDIA, extremely complex, extremely fast computers. Now you gotta remember, when we first put computers in cars, they were 8-bit machine.
Uh-huh.
You know, 8 kilobytes. You know, very slow baud rate. But today, obviously, most cars today are running anywhere between 50 and 100 computers. And you got to remember too, that all of these computers are multiplex. So do you understand what multiplexing is? Well, multiplexing is, it's a bidirectional data bus line, and every computer ties into that bus line. So every computer can generate its own set of codes, can do its own self-test, self-diagnostic procedures. And then the diagnostic link connector that you hook your scan to in is going to be able to access all of those computers. So the technician's really got to take the scan to and be able to go in there, do a state of health check on all these various modules, and figure out if they all know what they're doing, that they're all alive and working, and that they're all able to function normally and correctly and so forth. And that's where some of these check engine lights and network code lights and so on and so forth are going to come in. Okay. All right, lost my slide. Yeah. Okay. So the average Vermonter drives what, about 17,000 miles per year. And in that time, the average Vermont car generates 935 pounds of carbon monoxide, 13,600 pounds of carbon dioxide, 114 pounds of hydrocarbon, 68 pounds of NOx, oxides of nitrogen, and about 7.5 tons of air pollution. About 700 to 800 times more if you've got a misfire in any one of the cylinders. And what do you mean by misfire? Well, misfire is any time that a certain air fuel mixture isn't allowed to completely combust to result in no harmful air pollutants. Okay. And one of the jobs of this OBD2 system is to detect those misfires. It can detect a single misfire. So that single misfire may bring that car into a shop and say, Midas, and well, I'm getting this flashing intermittent check engine light. What's going on? Well, you know, then it becomes a whole routine of tracking down what's causing that misfire. These systems are so sensitive now that if you're driving on a rough road sometimes, that the momentarily rapid acceleration of the crankshafts can actually be considered a misfire of the computer and can erroneously turn on those lights. So it is a matter of concern that they be able to ferret that out. So for Vermont motorists, I would ask, what should it cost to turn off that mill light? And mill light stands for malfunction indicator lamp, and it can be check engine, it can be airbag, it can be. I mean, what should that cost? Or and also to obviously pass a state inspection. I mean, back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, we used to charge an initial upfront diagnostic fee, which covered about an hour's worth of diagnostic work. And then it was hourly after that, hour by hour, until you find the problem. And of course, you have to go back to the customer every single time and find out if they want to pay for the next hour and so on. So today, Dodge stores are offering free code checks. I see it on the TV and on the, for advertisements and a free code check is great. But I'm hoping no customer is going to say, okay, what codes do I have stored in my random access memory in my computer? And what am I now going to change to fix my car? I mean, just because I got a 420 code. Okay, so I'm going to say, for my potential customers out there, or for the concerns I have for the citizens of Vermont, the motoring citizens of Vermont, is you need to spend that money wisely. And it's going to be costly. Obviously, more so if you even go to the dealership for that.
Yeah, I just have a question. Thanks for this education, I guess. But I mean, I gotta guess sometimes codes point exactly what the problem is. And I remember a number of years ago, Henry Bennis, he's the local shop guy and pretty good. And I had a check engine light, and I drove in, and he plugged in underneath, and then kind of snickered and went around to my fuel door, popped it open, and the cap was missing. And so I'm guessing the code told him, exactly where to go, because he immediately went there. So I guess sometimes the code's got to point exactly what the problem is, and sometimes it may not, or you might get, sort of like you're describing, occasionally sort of intermittent or, unknown.
Yes and no. Now, technicians generally realize that if the gas cap is not properly seated, or if the gas cap itself is faulty and is allowing unburned hydrocarbons in the gas tank, and obviously that pressure builds a heat of the day, to escape into the atmosphere, and that's what the system's designed to do. It's going to set a certain code. Now, you can't always say it's going to be a loose gas cap, because, I mean, you can buy the equipment to manually test the cap. I mean, it's expensive equipment. I mean, the cap is one possible choice, but I've spent days trying to find the cause of one of those. You gotta remember, the computer is looking at a hole in the fuel vapor containment system of less than 20 thousandths of an inch to generate that code. And the idea is, this is evaporative emissions management. You don't want evaporating fuel vapors to leave the car. We have vacuum containment systems on fuel pumps now. I mean, gasoline vapors in the form of hydrocarbon mixed with oxides of nitrogen and ultraviolet sunlight and temperature to create smog. So we don't want smog. But we generate smog in Vermont. It just doesn't stay here because we're part of that northeast transport region. Okay, that's a general, it's a general rule. Vermont has pretty low emissions, but I mean air pollutants, but yes.
I apologize, Professor Clifford, to interrupt. I know that our Lieutenant Governor had suggested that you have plenty to offer in this area. And when you can keep going, I know that I scheduled it to 9:30, but that's because I have a meeting I have to go to and for. But you are welcome to, and committee time is open thereafter. I certainly want to make sure that you cover for recommendations that you would want to see or not see on the particular DMV bill and on Representative Noyes and his effort towards inspections. We do have DMV in the room if there's particular pieces that come up. Representative Pouch, you can decide how far that you want to go. And if you have more specifically what you want us to do or not do on any of the spots, we'll leave you to go through that. My apologies. But that was where 9:30 came in, but there is opening there for you guys to continue as long as it's up to you.
All right.
My apologies, but thank you very much.
What do you want me to do?
Well, let's get to the chase. So, I mean, you've told us, the complications and how, and we have in our bill, and we will hear more testimony about, are inspections too costly? Should we not have them? We've had that discussion potentially every other year.
Okay,
And I think, we'd have to measure, what we have about inspections is sort of out there is we're inspecting only for safety items and to keep cars safe. So in your experience, how often do you run into a ball joint that's, or a bad tire that's going to really be a safety issue versus it's just costing Vermonters money?
well,
But we're also dealing with the air quality issues
Yes.
and meeting the requirements that we are supposed to meet as a ozone transport zone with the EPA. And that, as my understanding, is why we've had this had to deal with ways to help people get their OBV light fixed because it is expensive. So there's that issue in addition to the safety issues that we're sort of trying to balance.
I guess the bottom line of where I was heading, I did add a little bit more to go to get there, but diagnosing a mill light should not be in the province of periodic vehicle annual inspections governed and controlled by the state. It should be to a certified professional, fully trained technician who's able to handle that problem. And I don't think the mill light, I read that section of your bill that talked about a study committee to look at that. And my recommendation would be, I think the mill portion should be dropped for that reason, notwithstanding the air pollutant concerns. I think that you should consider studying in more detail the entire state inspection process to include the possibility of a tiered system based on vehicle age, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, over 30, over 50 is antique anyway, whatever. I think in the first 10 years or the first 5 years, certainly, if I'm bringing a car in the shop to inspect, 90% of it's just doing the electronic hookup portion. I mean, I'm not going to be down there checking ball joints and bushings on control arms. I mean, what's a chance? And that's related to the cost of the test on the motoring public, more so than is a state inspection worth it? Then, yeah, I mean, obviously you're going to catch some things randomly from time to time. And I've caught cars through the inspection process that I wouldn't consider to be roadworthy, and I've even called the police to prevent one from leaving the lot, the lot, because it was in that bad of a condition. But, you know, what percentage of those vehicles does that really pertain to? And if you look at the Vermont, the safety study that Vermont does, I don't know if they do it every year, but they said that 94% of traffic fatalities are the result of operator error, distraction, road conditions, impairment, whatever. Less than 2% caused by defective parts, defective vehicle systems, and so on and so forth. So my argument would be, is it really worth pulling $50 million a year out of the motoring citizens of Vermont for the small percentage? And then, can the police perform that role more easily? Roadside checks or stops, and whatever the case may be. And
So just kind of further on that, so it sounds like you're saying this mill light checking, which is part of the inspection process right now, you would recommend that that goes away? Because the inspectors don't really know how to properly address this anyway.
I would say if a car comes into the inspection station and any of the diagnostic warning lights are illuminated, that it would be on the role of the inspector to advise the customer that this could be a possible, area where you need to have this diagnosed completely and thoroughly and correctly and needs to be addressed. Obviously, if the airbag light's on and the airbags aren't working, that's a concern. But I did read in your new manual, and I haven't read the whole new manual. I haven't looked at the manual in 20 years, but your new manual says that if you see a safety systems light on, that it's advise only to the customer, and it's not reason for reject. And that, to me, I would guess would be like, obstruction or the front automotive braking, automatic braking system, or, whatever the safety concern is on newer cars. But yeah, I think that's the way I would recommend you go.
And just further on that, so back to the emissions, and you referred to the smog states like Colorado, which has enhanced tailpipe testing.
Mhm.
And how does Vermont, so our tailpipe testing is not as robust as Colorado's?
No, we don't even have it. What we have is
I thought we
a,
had some type of check. I thought that was part of the inspection.
well, I mean, you can
process.
check the exhaust and, is the catalytic converter there? Yeah, it is. It may not be functioning at all, but it's there. The only way you know that the catalytic converter is functioning is it didn't set a code for the catalytic converter. Because catalytic converters have upstream O2 sensors and downstream, and there's a rationality test built into the OBD2 system to determine what the oxygen absorption capability of the three-way catalyst is. But if you didn't have that, you'd have no way of knowing.
Okay, so unless one of the mill lights is on, the inspector's not taking a closer look at emissions, filtering, function, et cetera.
Oh, no,
Okay,
no, none whatsoever. It's just what you have now is an OBD2 check pertaining to the mill light, key on, engine off, and the mill light staying on with the engine running, key on, engine running. If the check engine light fails to illuminate with key on, engine off, then that's part of the boot up check system of the computer where it's just looking to make sure its circuitry is intact. And it can in fact turn the bulb on. It may not be able to turn the bulb on. But a power to ground, a power to power, some of these other concerns can turn that light on. You know. And if the light is on and stays on steadily with the engine running, then that means that as far as the code criticality is concerned, there's a code in there that the computer recognizes and continue to recognize as an issue. But, and then the only time the check engine light will actually flash is if it detects a misfire. But I would think a customer that's driving down the road and their light starts flashing at them is going to go to a repair facility. Thing.
So you had mentioned that Vermont is a low emission state. And you mentioned something about we fall in a New England area for emissions, or do we?
Yeah,
I mean, do we measure ours or do we measure it as a region?
no, you do have emissions monitoring locations. When I was teaching at VTC, we had Tom Moy from the Natural Resources coming down periodically, giving us updates on emissions testing and the state of the problem in Vermont. And I don't know if he still does that. He probably doesn't work there anymore, but whoever. The problem with Colorado and California and some of those spots, well, there's a couple of problems. Inversion, atmospheric conditions also that causes that those solutions will be forced down closer to the ground level ozone. Smog formation is really a function of oxides of nitrogen. Oxides of nitrogen are generated when combustion temperatures reach 2,500 degrees within the cylinder. It's high temperature, high pressure creates, you remember air's not what, 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. So there's more nitrogen in there to burn than there is oxygen when a combustion occurs inside an internal combustion engine. But that nitrogen can form with the oxygen and chemically, interact at a certain pressure and temperature. And that NOx helps create smog. Smog. But, the thing with Vermont is, we may not have an emission, we may be one of the better states in the country as far as air pollution levels at different parts around the state. Probably worse in Chittenden County, I'm not sure, but we have mountains, we have wind patterns. But what we're creating at the upper atmosphere can actually go to other states. So we can affect levels in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, whatever the case may be. We're part of that upper atmosphere transport region.
But similarly, then we are affected by New York. And
Well, we
so,
could be, I mean, when they had those wildfires, we were getting
Right.
smoke
yes, yeah,
from neighboring
Right.
states, so.
okay, thank you.
Do you know what percentage of inspections end up, and maybe at the DMV would know better, with light, with, warning lights? So how many inspections happen and what percentage are identify those lights?
That's a good question, because I did see that the DMV submitted to you some data, and it wasn't really broken down. And I think the DMV said that their data wasn't granular enough. I guess they weren't asking of all the questions and they weren't able to ferret out the percentages. I'd like to know that. I'd like to know what percentage of vehicles that were failed in the state of Vermont, even last year, let's say, or that due to warning lights being on. That'd be something that'd be worth knowing. And then on top of that would be, what did it end up costing them to get that vehicle back on the road?
The guy that you called the cops on, did you identify a problem with his vehicle and he couldn't fix it, no money or whatever? So that's why you called him in, or he had a severe problem, you had to get him off the road immediately?
Well, you kind of got to be pretty diplomatic when you're testing and dealing with the public on these issues. And I did work as a service manager and senior technical service advisor for the 4 Midas stores for a number of years. And when you approach this, you know, most customers are going to thinking, okay, my car's going to pass. I've got no problem. I just got to pay this $80 fee or whatever. And most people know if they are possibly driving a car that's not going to pass, obviously, if my exhaust is loud or whatever the case may be. Yeah, that was a case where brake lines were completely rusted and just pouring out brake fluid. So this was a major disaster waiting to happen. And even if your master cylinder, say, is completely dry of brake fluid, it may still stop the car.
One time?
Well, it may stop it several times. There is a procedure that once those pistons in the master cylinder bore have fully stroked, beyond that, there's a spring-loaded mechanism to still get some pressure to the brake system. So, you know, whether they thought that that was fine or not, I don't know. But obviously, you know, we can't allow, because you can think of that case in New York where that passenger van that resulted in all the deaths and was traced back to a technician that improperly checked the brakes on that van and didn't do the proper amount of follow through. And technicians in Vermont are not immune from prosecution or civil or civil suits. So, yeah. And you know,
Good reason.
excuse me, sir.
That was a good reason.
You know, that was, I don't know, in my 20 years of inspecting cars, I don't know, maybe I had like 1 or 2 that kind of fell into that category. I mean, most is like, okay, you've got 180 thousandths of an inch play on your ball joints, and you're only allowed 120 of lateral radial play. I mean, you got to change the ball joint. I mean, more often than not, on a bad day at the garage and you've got no work and bays are empty, but you've got state inspections coming in, there's hope. Because those state inspections can result in a significant amount of repair work. And what's the customer going to say? I'm going to go get a second opinion. I mean, there's always that. Or call the DMV. I want a DMV inspector to take a look at this to see if you're not joshing me.
Yeah, so we're kind of jumping around a couple of things, but you're implying that inspections and you know, it's not a sure thing, and obviously not every inspector, but some inspections drive up the business really and aren't necessarily safety issues.
Well, I guess you could technically make the argument that they're all safety issues in one way, shape, form, or another. I mean, yeah, could that ball joint pop out of its socket and cause a crash? Again, in 20 years of working on cars, actually 30 years more like, nothing I've ever seen happen. But there is degrees of severity. And is it worth, and what, I didn't have a chance, I wanted to call around and see what the average price of a state inspection is now at a dealership or just a general repair facility. I don't know what it is. I mean, back when I was doing it, you know, we charged like, it's like, it was pretty reasonable, you know, 30, 40, 50 bucks. Could be as low as 20 in dealerships today. I mean, I'd be surprised if it wasn't at least 100 and 150. I mean, if the,
I thought I heard it was 80 or 100, but that's before.
well, it all
identified
depends.
with all these repairs.
on what the dealership is allowing on a flat rate basis for those technicians to get paid. Those technicians at dealerships are usually flat rate. Flat rate means that they're paid by the job. So if a flat rate on a state inspection is 0.8 of an hour, and maybe 0.3 of it's warranty pay. I mean, say a lot of these garages are now offering a free state inspection if you buy the car from them. I mean, are they gonna pay their technicians 0.8 when they can pay them 0.3? I don't know. I don't believe the state regulates that in any way, shape, or form.
All right, last question. Ken.
Do you find that these technicians do take advantage of people come in here, like you just said, the bays are empty? And they come in, let's say a female comes in, let's just say her name is Candace, and she's told that a boomerang thermolator is busted, it'll be $800, and they repair it. Does that happen?
Thank you.
Let me see, how should I answer this? I would hope, certainly any technician that was working for me, you needed to be honest. There was no room for dishonesty, corruption, fraud. You follow the state inspection manual, you do it to the letter. And when I was a service manager, I went behind every technician and put my eyes on every car to make sure that I agreed with what they were condemning. Do I think I think every manager does that, or every technician is above and beyond? I always hear, my car didn't pass here, but I took it down to Joe's, and he stickered it for me.
That's what Jim and I do.
You used to be able to do that. You can't do it anymore.
So
Well, if you got a good man on payroll.
I know they have this new system. They've got a new state inspection sticker now, and they got this new link system. It's like a laptop or whatever it is. I have never worked under that system, so I'm not sure what that's all about, but maybe they're trying to provide for checks and balances to keep that under control or not. But an industrious individual can always find a workaround, probably.
Mhm.
But in terms of 123 in section 43, I think you really need to beef up that study committee. And you need to make that study more comprehensive and inclusive. Let's look at state inspections in general. Okay, what are they achieving? What's the purpose? Are they achieving the purpose? What's the cost on Vermonters? Is it reasonable, given less than 2% of traffic accidents are caused by? And then what about that? What about those mill light portion of, I'm retired, a lot of my income is Social Security, and I don't have a lot of money that I can afford to pay on registrations. And I just registered my car this year, and it was like, it went up. And there's some clean air fee in there now. I don't know what that's for.
All right, thank you very much. I think we went a little bit over, but thank you very much for coming in, John. For providing the testimony, very much appreciated. And,
Thank you.